Hello, my name is Jeffrey Fry, and I want to tell you a story of why Help Find Care got started. About 4.5 years ago, my brother died, and at that time he was living in Maryland with my mom and taking care of my mother. And the first thing I had to do was go and bury my brother in Hagerstown. And when I went to visit my mother, my brother had been taking care of my mother for all those years, and I noticed that her mental facilities were starting to go down. And she really had a hard time taking care of herself. So after the funeral and whatnot, I decided to go ahead and take care of all the legal things with my mom, the will and various things like that. But most importantly, I thought at that time that she really needed somebody to come in and help her with clothing and bathing and feeding. So I went about trying to hire somebody for my mother in Virginia, and I was living in Texas. Well, that was an exercise in futility. It took about 3 weeks to find somebody that was adequate. And during that time, for about a year, she had about 4 or 5 different caregivers. And doing it remotely was incredibly difficult to do. So my mother was deteriorating, and so I decided to move her down to Texas. The process, we sold her condo in Alexandria, moved her down to Austin, Texas. It was a beautiful place, found a wonderful place for her. And at the same time, I contracted with another agency. And the fees were flat fees, and they had someone come in, and I was fortunate enough to be able to work out of the house with my mother. I had her come move in with me. And during that time, we had a really, really good caregiver. And one of the things that I did, we got friendly. And one of the things I found out is that the disparity between what the caregiver was making and what the agency that I hired for the caregiver was charging was so large that right away I said, this is wrong. The person that's actually working with my mother should be making more money. And at that moment I said, this has to be fixed. You had that gotcha moment, that wow moment that says, there has to be a better way of doing this. So the kernel of Help Find Care happened. It didn't happen right away. I knew I didn't know enough about the caregiving industry to do it on my own. So I wanted to make sure I got a team together of someone that was at least a nurse, someone that had worked in the caregiving industry, someone that understood the personnel issues that had to go along with starting your own business. The reason being, at that moment, taking care of my mother and seeing her essentially as an invalid, as a little girl again, I promised her, she is now departed and gone, that I would create a system that would allow people in her condition to find care, and also to empower the caregivers to make a good living wage. And that was the team that I formed, and that's the story behind Help Find Care.